Welcome back, fanatics. I'm Jiles, and today we're going to talk about something that has mystified man through the ages, all the way from primitive caveman through ancient Egyptians to the founding fathers of the USA to your grandfather in the 70s. This one thing has created problems that until now, until today, until this show, have mostly remained a mystery to the masses. And that is, how do I set up my home theater or my media room, right? I've got these boxes and they do things, and what are they? And why are there so many cables? Well, today, the shrouded veil of mystery will be removed. Your eyes will be opened, the darkness will be conquered by the light, and you will understand all of this. So we're on the floor, and I've got a media stand here with a bunch of stuff in it, and we're gonna plug all this stuff together, and I'm just gonna walk through what these things are. So if you're kind of curious about what kind of cable does what and why do you hook this to that thing, we're gonna talk through all these things so you can understand the lingo and kind of have a base of information, so when you get ready to work on this stuff yourself, you'll kind of know what all the pieces do, why you need them, what they're gonna do, and how they work together. And I think first thing, we're just gonna take a pan across here, and I'll talk about each of these devices and tell you what they are and why you need them. As we start to talk through these, let me kind of give you a foundation of what's going on here. So I'm installing an ultra short throw projector, and that's gonna be the screen. So I've got everything ripped apart. So while I've got this ripped apart, I thought we would talk about it. This is just some inexpensive furniture from IKEA, and I've got some stuff jammed in here to make my living room media center. I wouldn't call it really a home theater, but it does get the job done, and it's pretty nice. It's got some good components. So let's talk about what all these things are. And I think the first thing we should talk about is the brains, the core of any system, and that is your AVR or your processor. So this device is kind of like the master traffic cop for everything. So all of your sources will come into here. We'll talk about what sources are in a bit. And then this will amplify the audio that goes to your speakers. And then via HDMI, we'll send the video out to your display device. And that can be a television or a projector, just depending on how you got stuff set up. Now, this is Onkyo, and this is a 5100, I think. And I think this is a 7.1 system, meaning that it could run 7 channels plus your subwoofer out. So that's what this does. This is the traffic cop, and you can say, hey, I want to listen to my Blu-ray player, I want to listen to my game, or I want to watch cable or satellite, and whatever source that is that sends the signal, we'll send it here. This will then do all the magic with the signal, send the audio to the speakers amplified, because this is an AVR, does amplification, and then the video goes out via HDMI to your display device. Now, some other things that I've got in here, this is for my remote control. This is one of the old school Logitech units, and basically this will repeat IR, so you have a handset, push the button, IR comes out of here, and this is also a repeater here to control all of the stuff that you've got here. So AVR, this is a part of the remote control system. Now, you could just use the remote control that comes with your AVR. That's no problem, and I think most people probably do that. But when you get up into more complex systems, you'll want to have some kind of other remote control system. Now, down here, this is just a really glorified power strip. Now, it's a very nice power strip. This is Shunyata. It's the PS8, and they make really, really nice power strips, power conditioners, and if you want to get deep into electricity, this is the kind of thing that you want to take a look at. You know, some people will write it off and say, oh, you don't need that kind of stuff. You could just use one from Walmart. Well, you can, but if I'm going to spend some money on this stuff, I want a nice piece of equipment to act as my power distribution, my surge protection, and whatnot, and that will do it. Now, when we go to the back, you can see the other pieces that are back there, but that's actually just part of my security system. And then there's a network switch back there, a really old school Netgear network switch. So I've got Ethernet running into this room, and from the wall, it plugs into that Ethernet switch, and then that splits out to all my other devices. So that gives everything connectivity. I would prefer to run over Ethernet when possible rather than using Wi-Fi. It's just a little bit better, faster, stronger, you know, all those things, and that's my preference. All right, let's move over here, and we're gonna get to sources. So remember, traffic cop over here, the Onkyo, electricity, network, and now these are some sources. So this is Xbox. They come in all kinds of flavors and is for playing games with a bunch of controllers. There's the Nintendo Switch, and we have an NVIDIA Shield. Now, for watching television, watching shows and movies and things, the two components here that are most important are one, the Shield, because this can streams everything, and you can also use it to run Plex if you want to, so you can rip movies and play those files back, or television, or whatever you want to. So you'll find this in lots and lots of setups. If you want to stream, in my opinion, there are only two devices that you should look at. You should look at the NVIDIA Shield or the Apple TV 4K. That's it. Those are the two. You know, you don't really have to get much more complex than that. If you just want a file player, then Zapiti is high on my list for file players. It's super awesome, but it doesn't really stream. That's what this is for. Now, the other component that most people will have outside of gaming stuff is going to be some way to play 4K Blu-ray discs, or just Blu-rays if you don't want to go 4K. I don't have a dedicated player in this setup. If I were to have one, it would almost certainly be the Panasonic, but you can use the player in an Xbox or a PlayStation if you want. They're, in my opinion, not as quite a good a quality, but you can use it. All right, now, so these are sources. These play television, movies, whatever, video and audio. That will go out in an HDMI cable into your processor, your AVR. Your AVR will amplify things and send it out to your speakers. You can focus, you can do it. And then video will go to your, there's a projector way over there. It's right there, or a television. So just consider that as a television. All right, now let's look at the back of all this stuff, and I'll show you how it all plugs together. And this is where stuff gets kind of gnarly, especially for this, because I haven't tried to clean any of the cables yet, but this is real, man. We're keeping it real for you. Welcome to the rear of the AV cabinet, and we're looking at the AVR, the audio video receiver now. The light's a little bit ghetto back here, but I think you can see enough to understand what's going on. So there are lots of connections, and as these become more advanced, you get even more. So what you're seeing here is like the smallest number of connections that you probably would see on a unit. And I mean, some of these things are just covered, but don't let that overwhelm you because this really just comes down to a handful of ins and outs for your system. And a lot of the stuff you just won't ever use for the most part. So just to talk about things. So if you don't know about all the cables, most important cable is probably HDMI. And that's the one that's this trapezoid shape. This carries both video and audio, and you'll have one of these coming from each of your source devices. So your NVIDIA Shield, your Xbox, your Blu-ray player, and they're gonna plug into a section that'll be called HDMI in on the back of your receiver. And this will take care of all of your inputs from your various places that you're gonna get your content from. Now, there will be a HDMI out section, and sometimes there'll be sub and main, or main and secondary zone, or they can call it different things, but there's typically one called main, and it'll also have ARC and eARC. This is the one that you want to use. So this is the one that's gonna run out to your television or to your projector. Most people will never use the secondary output, but there are some special case uses. We're not going to cover that here, but for the most part, this is the one that you want to have plugged up. And so you'll have another HDMI cable, just like the cables that hook your sources up. However, it'll plug in here and then run out to your television. All right, so that takes care of all your HDMIs. Now, other things that are super important here, you've got electricity. Some AVRs like this one on the low end will have the cable that's just built in. Some will have more of the computer style cable, but you need electricity, internet. So you could use Ethernet if you've got that. And remember I said I've got this switch down here, and that's what we've got going on here. And this connection goes to the switch, and then the switch will have a cable that runs to the wall, which goes to your home network. So you can use that, or you can use Wi-Fi, just depending on what you've got in your environment. And that'll be set up inside of the UI on your AVR. And then the other important piece are your speaker outputs. And there are two that you're gonna be concerned about. So you're gonna have your left and your right, you're gonna have your center channel and your surrounds, and all AVRs are gonna have different styles of connections, but I think this is kind of interesting because it shows pretty much the main two styles. So you'll have 5-way binding posts, and you can use banana plugs. This is what a banana plug is. So it's, speaker wire runs into the banana plug in, and then you can just jam it into this guy. Now, if you ever try and put it in here and you say, oh man, there's no way to get it in, it's all clogged up. Well, sometimes they put a little plastic stopper in the end that you can pry out to open this up. So don't despair, you can get in there. And then on less expensive models, instead of having banana plugs or 5-way binding posts for everything, they'll have these spring-loaded connectors that typically take much smaller gauge wire, that's you can just strip the wire and push this back and jam it in the hole, and you're good to go. If you look closely, this says front, right, and left. Then you've got your center, surround left and right, and then you get into Atmos and height effects channels and other zones. But for this, just assume that you'll have a left and right, a center, and then 2 surround channels, and that'll make your 5 out of a 5.1 system. And then if you look over here, this kind of shows what it looks like. So here's your main position, seating position. You have left and right, your right front, left front, center channel, and your surrounds. And then you're gonna have a subwoofer. Now, the subwoofer is never powered out of the AVR. You will use a RCA cable, or with more advanced equipment, an XLR cable, and you need to come over to where all these connections are and find the one that's labeled subwoofer, right? Sometimes it'll have 2, sometimes it'll have just 1, but you'll plug your XL or your RCA cable into this, and that runs to your subwoofer, and we'll cover that in just a minute. But that's pretty much all there is that you have to do on your AVR. I mean, you can plug in antennas, you can have sources that have digital inputs, and you can use optical or coax for that kind of stuff. There's other things that you can do, but at a very basic level, you've got your sources in, HDMI, your video out to your screen or your projector, right, your television, and you'll want to use main. You'll have your speakers, at least the left and right plugged in, but typically left, right, or right, left, center, right surround, and left surround. And then you'll have some type of internet for the unit itself. So that's all that plugs in here. That is pretty straightforward. And just remember, gotta have electricity. Let's take a look at the back of some of the sources so you can see what you need to plug into those guys and what those need. We're looking at the rear of my Xbox Series X, and it's not super easy to see here, but this shows the typical 3 connections that you're gonna have on all your source devices. You'll have internet, and this can be wireless, but I'm using Ethernet. You're gonna have your HDMI out, which runs to your AVR, and we covered that. And then you're gonna have power. And for the most part, that's all you'll ever have plugged into the back of these things. Now, for this unit, I have controllers that need to be charged with USB, so those will plug into the USB ports. But the 3 main ones are always your power, your internet, and your HDMI that goes out to your processor. Now, if you look down here, you can see this NVIDIA Shield, and it has the exact same things, right? So here is, this is your controller. You've got your power here, your HDMI, and I don't have it plugged up now, but that's the port for your Ethernet. So they're very standard, whether it's an Xbox or NVIDIA Shield, you want to have those 3 things all the time. Power, HDMI, which runs out of this source unit, these are sources, into the back of your AVR, your processor, into the HDMI input section. So think about the chain, right? You have the thing that you want to watch that runs to the brain, the traffic cop of the system, and then this traffic cop will then send your output, and we're going to get to output devices now. And there are 2 kinds of outputs. There's going to be audio and video. All right, so we talked about these different audios, right? Well, the speaker cable, if you follow it along, there we go, it runs to the back of this big old world's largest bookshelf speaker. That's a Stark Sound ICH3, almost mini towers. It's huge. And you can see on the back, I've got some 90-degree banana plugs back there. Well, you'll have duplicates of this cable, the speaker wire that run to each of your speakers. So in the middle, which would be right here where I put the center channel at when I put that in, there would be a speaker there, and it would come from center, right? And I would just, for this AVR, I would strip the wire down, plug it into that spring-loaded connector, and plug it into the back of the speaker. And then this set of banana plugs, 5-way binding posts that I don't have anything plugged in now, that'll run to the other speaker over there. Can we focus? Yes, we can. So that'll be that. All right. So that's the output for your audio. Now, remember, for your subwoofer, you're going to take an RCA cable, and I'll show you that in just a minute, and plug in here, and it'll run to your subwoofer. You see that red thing over there? That's my subwoofer, and I'll show you that connection in a bit. And the last one that we're going to talk about is, remember, HDMI cable coming from your HDMI out, your main, to your video device. And that could be a television, or in this case, it's going to be an ultra short throw projector. So let's take a look first at this ultra short throw projector, and then we'll take a quick look at that subwoofer, and that's it. You'll have covered everything that you really need to know, and I'll cover what the RCA cable looks like and the HDMI connection into this projector. So now we're going to look at the display device, and this could be a television or an ultra short throw projector like we have in this scenario. So this one is a Hisense model 100L9G, but everything works pretty much the same. And the one thing that you need to be most worried about is whichever HDMI input is going to give you the best capabilities. So in the case of this one, we've got 3 inputs, but this one is the one that does eARC, and we'll cover eARC in another video. eARC is a technology that would allow you to take your source device out of your television, in the case of a smart TV, output that to your AVR or a soundbar, and then get your sound that way. So it's kind of the opposite way that HDMI usually goes. Usually flows source, processor, or AVR, then display device. But nowadays you can do your display device and your source is the same unit, and then use eARC, which is the audio return channel, and send that to some type of audio system. But we'll cover that later. In this case, you want to plug in here HDMI 2 eARC 4K 120. This looks like it's the best input for this unit. And then this will have your 3 standard connections. You'll have HDMI coming from your processor, you're going to have electricity, and then you're going to have Ethernet. And remember, sometimes you can use Wi-Fi if you go that route. I'm going to use Ethernet because I have it available and I prefer it. But that's it. I mean, when you hook up your display, those are the 3 things that you need to make sure you've got. The connection coming from your processor or your AVR, electricity, and your internet. All right, let's go take a look at that last thing, which is one of my favorite things, which is the subwoofer. Now we're going to take a look at the subwoofer, and this is one of my favorite components in the system. Really makes your experience a lot better when you've got one of these. And typically on a subwoofer, you're going to have 2 connections you have to deal with. You're going to have your input, and that could be via XLR or RCA, and that comes from your processor, and then electricity. There are basically 2 different kinds of cables you can use. This is an RCA cable, and you would find your RCA input. Sometimes it'll say sub in, sometimes it'll say line in, it'll be 2. If there are 2 of them, I will typically take a Y adapter splitter, split this off, and then plug into both the left and right. And then for XLR, this is a single channel, right? So it's got 3 pins instead of the 1 pin, like in your RCA cable, and you'll find your input and plug that in. So both these cables serve the same purpose. They just have different ends, and the technology is a little bit different. Now, like I said, the other connection is your electricity. Sometimes you'll connect this unit to your phone or an app via Bluetooth, and some very advanced subwoofers actually have Ethernet connectivity or Wi-Fi, and if so, you'll need to set that up. Now, as you notice, there are a scad of other settings back here. We're not going to cover those today, but we'll cover that in a future video. So there you go. I've got this ripped apart, and you can kind of see and experience what it's like to set this up in your own house. Subwoofer, left channel, right channel, Center is gonna be here. We're gonna have this projector projecting onto that screen. Right there is going to be the Onkyo, the brain of things. We've got power and Ethernet behind there. And then on the far right-hand side of that cabinet, we've got all of my source devices, 3 of them in the case of the system. And that's pretty much it. So I'm looking forward to getting this thing set up and running, and hopefully this has been helpful to you. If so, please like and subscribe. Consider subscribing. It's very important to the channel for people to support, and the best way to support, other than writing me humongous checks, which I love, is to hit that subscribe button. So I look forward to this helping you, and I will see you in the next video.